my pleasure now to introduce the speaker that is the speaker of the hour, and a friend, a journalist, a theologian, a seminarian, pastor, and the only syndicated pastor. And I think we've all read at least one of his articles in the newspaper. And you know, one of the things I like about Byron is he says what we all want to say, and I really applaud him for that. So, Byron Williams.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I know people get nervous when a preacher is the keynote speaker, to know how long we're going to be here. I can assure you you'll be home by dinner. Almost 40 years ago, as Mayor Santos said, it was April the 4th, 1967. Martin Luther King went to the famed Riverside Church in New York City to make his first public statement in opposition to the war in Vietnam. And he told the crowd there that day that it was time to break the silence. King had come to the conclusion that the war in Vietnam was unjust, it was evil, and it was a futile exercise. We gather here today, some 5 decades later, with those same concerns. By invading and occupying the sovereign nation of Iraq, we, along with the rest of the world, have watched with utter disbelief as our government, suffering from the malignant tumor of megalomania that threatens to invade the lymph nodes of our moral compass, which will ultimately render our democratic values to hospice care. Just as King stood on a hot, sweltering afternoon in August and said the promissory note for all Americans being equal as it was related to African Americans was a check that came back stamped insufficient funds, we too must now wonder whether or not our misguided war has led to the bankruptcy of our republic. For the legacy that was first articulated by Jefferson, held together by Lincoln, fortified and preserved by Roosevelt, is now being consumed under the weight of no-bid contracts, cherry-picked intelligence, fear, division, and a cheap patriotism that neatly divides the world into us versus them. Furthermore, we have been led down by a bipartisan coalition of elected officials who found it more expedient to appear patriotic than to possess the courage required to actually be patriotic. And like King, all of us assembled today have come to the conclusion that we can no longer be silent, because this illegal war only directly impacts a finite group of military families. It only impacts those who speak a language that most of us don't speak, worship in a way that most of us don't worship. Is no excuse to sit on the sidelines of conformity, bemoaning the fact that someone ought to do something. We gather today affirming that we are the someone who is willing to take an uncompromising stand. We further acknowledge that it's always a moral struggle when guided missiles are directed by misguided men and women.